Hello, very good morning. Today in this class we we are going to discuss about motherboard components. We are going to identify what are the motherboard components available, like processor, chipset, SMPS, disk drives, RAM, uh, add-on slots, AGP, keyboard, monitor, and other components which are available and which can be connected on the motherboard. We are going to discuss about this. So in the last class, we have discussed about BIOS functions, post and also power and self-test and also bootstrap loading. So in this class, we are going to see identify motherboard components, how they look like and what are the brief description about all these motherboard components we will see now. So first, what is meant by motherboard? In the last classes we have also seen, but we have to recollect the word motherboard now. The motherboard is a printed circuit board and foundation of a computer, that is the biggest board in a computer chassis. The motherboard allocates power and allows communication to and between the CPU, RAM and all other computer hardware components. This is the basic function of the motherboard, in which all the components, computer related components, maximum components are mounted on it, and this motherboard allows communication among all the devices. So this is the typical motherboard where maximum components are mounted on this motherboard. So that's why this is called motherboard. Maximum components like central processing unit, RAM slots, north bridge and south bridge, PCI slots, AGP slots, I/O ports and IDE connectors and CMOS batteries and ROM, all the devices and supporting devices, power connector, all are mounted on this. This is typical motherboard. So this is also another typical motherboard. Here we have clear look. This is a CPU and here RAM slots are there. These are the IDE connectors, south bridge and north bridge and CMOS battery. These are PCI slots, AGP slot, I/O ports available. So this is typical motherboard. So as our class is motherboard components, identifying the motherboard components. So what are the motherboard components, important components? Here we can list out here processor socket and processor, chipset, SMPS, switch remote power supply, disk drives, RAM, random access memory, PCI IDE is ISA slots, mouse, AGP, keyboard, monitor, printer, speaker, USB ports, universal serial bus ports, parallel port, serial port and modem of the system. These are the motherboard components available on the motherboard, and another components also there here, back panel connectors and ports. These includes display ports at VGA port, audio port, USB ports, Ethernet ports, PS2 ports for keyboard and mouse and parallel port, ATX power connector, front panel USB 2.0 connectors, front panel connectors, power switch, reset switch, power LED, order LED and front audio ports, CMOS battery, SATA connectors, ROM BIOS and chipset. These are the main motherboard components. We have to identify these motherboard components where located on the motherboard, and also we have to see a brief description about all these devices. So if we try to identify, this is the list available on the motherboard. So pin number 1 PS2 mouse port, this one is the PS2 mouse port, and pin number 2, sorry, number 2 is a PS2 keyboard, and the serial POIF output port, and fourth one is the HDMI connector, high density input. And next, fifth one, DVI connector, this one DVI connector. And sixth one, this is a VGA port which is used to connect monitor. And 7, it is IEEE 1394, that is nothing but firewire port. And number 8, this is SATA eSATA port. Number 9, these are all USB ports. And number 10, and this one, number 10, this is called RJ45 port, which is used to connect LAN cable. And number 11, these are audio ports. This is A, line in and line out, and microphone, there is a pink color, and side speaker out, that is a gray color, and rear speaker out, that is in black color, and center subwoofer yellow orange. So these are the audio ports. And 12 PCI Express 16 slot and PCI E 4 slot, and these are PCI slots 14, and 15 is called Super IO, and 16 print header, this is nothing but used for connecting the printer port, and 17 this is called COM port, it is also called serial port, 18 USB header, and USB cable can be connected, and this can be used for outside USB port, USB devices can be connected. And SATA 2 connectors here, 5 different types of 5 number of SATA connectors are there. These are used to connect SATA enabled devices like hard disk, CD-ROM drive, and etc. And this 20 is a IDE connector, this one. This is used to connect IDE based hard disk drives and floppy disk drives and CD-ROM drives, etc. And 21, 4 number of DDR3 DIMM memory slots. There are 4 number of slots are there, DDR DIMM slots, and 22 is a CPU. So these are the main board components on the motherboard components on the motherboard. So here also you can see components. This is a PCI slots. There are 5 number of PCI slots, and this is South bridge, and this one is called AGP slot, auxiliary graphics port, and this one North bridge, it is having heatsink, and IDE connectors, 2 IDE connectors are there, and there are 2 memory slots here in this case, and 20 pin ATS connector, this one, and CPU fan and heatsink mounting points. This is a CPU socket, yellow white one, and these are connectors for integrated peripherals. These are all current peripherals, PS2 mouse and keyboard, and parallel port, serial port, USB ports, and USB ports, LAN port, and audio ports. This is a CMOS backup battery. So this is another motherboard type having components on it. So motherboard components, if you see the PS2 mouse port, there is a green color. This port is for PS2 mouse, connecting for PS2 mouse. And PS2 keyboard port, this is in purple color. This port is used for connecting PS2 enabled keyboard. And SPDI output, it stands for Sony Philips digital interface, and is an interface to transmit digital audio. HDMI connector stands for high definition multimedia interface, is a digital interface for transmitting audio and video data on single cable. It is supported by most HD TVs and related components such as DVD and Blu-ray players and cable boxes and video game systems. Next, DVI is a digital visual interface connector. It is used to send digital information from a computer to a digital display such as flat panel LCD display. And next, VGA connector. This is also called video graphics array. Cables array an analog signal to opposite to digital signal, and this is used for connecting VGA monitors. Firewire header IEEE 1394. A serial bus used to exchange digital and audio data with high performance abilities. eSATA external serial advanced technology attachment used to connect SATA enabled devices externally. Generally external hard disks can be connected through this. USB universal serial bus port. There is usually a couple of 3 ports. These ports are located on each motherboard. used for USB enabled devices. Nowadays, maximum mouse, keyboard, and so other important scanner, printers, other important devices are coming with the USB enabled devices. So this can be connected through these ports. And RJ45, this is a resistor jack 45. It is commonly used for Ethernet or serial connection with 8 position, 8 conductor, 8P, 8C jack. So these are audio ports are also there. Line in port, it is a light blue color. These ports connect to tape, CVD, DVD player, audio sources. Line out port, this is line. This port connects a headphone or speaker. Microphone port pink. This port is connected to the microphone. Side speaker out color is gray. This port connect to the side speakers. And rear speaker out, which is in black color. This ports connect to the rear speakers and 4 channel, 6 channel or 8 channel audio configuration. Center subwoofer port yellow color, yellow orange color. This port connects the center and subwoofer speakers. And other components, PCI Express X16 graphics interface offers increased bandwidth and scalability over the previous HGP86 generation, allows to add expansion cards. PCI peripheral component interconnect slot. This supports add-on cards for sound cards, DVD cards, and some other add-on devices. Print header, it is a parallel port used to connect scanners and printers. Communication port, this port designed to connect the mouse and modem. IDE connector, responsible for connecting the IDE card used for hard disk, CD drives and DVD drives. CPU slot, this is used to install the CPU. Just slide it straight down into the slot. Special notches in the slot make it impossible to install them incorrectly. SATA controller, motherboard will typically have SATA controller for connecting SATA enabled devices such as hard disks. Power supply plug-in, this power supply, as its name implies, provides the necessary electrical power to make the PC operate. So these are the components listed here, motherboard components. So now we will see the images and working of this all the devices. Here we can see processor socket. This is a processor socket and this one is a processor. So this lever can be, here we can see a lever. This can be pulled out and processor can be inserted in proper way. So here also we can see this is a processor socket and this is a lever. By using this lever we can open this processor cover. Here is a processor socket cover. This processor can be inserted here based on the matching with the notches available on the processor socket and also on the processor itself. So after inserting it, we have to close this cover and we have to close this cover with the lever. So another chipset on the motherboard. Here is a chipset. It's got North British and South British also we can say. So this is a chipset on the motherboard. So here also you can see chipset on the motherboard. Intel 810 chipset on the motherboard. This SMPS switched mode power supply, which supplies the power to the motherboard and also other peripheral devices like hard disk drive, CD-ROM drive, and also power can be connected to all the audios and videos and also power on signals and everything. So this SMPS takes the AC input, 230 volts AC input from the mains and converts AC to DC and also step down the transfer to the required voltage level required by all the digital devices like motherboard and other devices in the computer. So SMPS means switch mode power supply. They are digital in nature. They step down voltage by switching it on off, hence their name. A switching mode power supply, also called switching mode power supply, switch mode power supply, switched power supply, SMPS or switcher, is an electronic power supply that incorporates a switching regulator to convert electrical power efficiently. So next, HDD connectors on the motherboard. Here we have two types of HDD connectors on the motherboard. Generally, in previous there were IDE connectors, integrated drive electronics, to connect the hard disk drive and also floppy disk drive and also CVD and DVD drives. So now this is almost outdated. Now we are having SATA connectors on it. So here this is the connector. This is a cable, flat ribbon cable. Here this is connector on the motherboard for connecting the hard disk, and this is the hard disk. Here we have another type of connector, SATA connector used to connect hard disk drives, CD-ROM drives, etc. Here we have 4 SATA connectors available on the motherboard. So by using this, we are connecting the hard disk. This is SATA cable. So this end we have connected to the motherboard, and this end we have inserted on the motherboard, and this end we have connected to the hard disk drive. So this is SATA here. This is SATA hard disk drive connectors and IDE hard disk drive connectors. So here also we can see. So these are called IDE connectors used for connecting hard disk drives, CD-ROM drives, and also floppy disk drives. So generally the connector which is used to connect hard disk and CD-ROM drive are in 40 pin, and the connector which is used for connecting the floppy disk drive is in 36 pins. So these are called IDE connectors, integrated drive electronics connectors on the motherboard, which are used to connect hard disk drive, floppy disk drive, CD-ROM drive, and etc. And these are the floppy disk drives of different types. In the older version, this was the 8-inch floppy drive. After this is the 8-inch floppy disk where we were storing the information, and this is a drive used to read and write the information on this floppy disk drive, 8-inch floppy disk drive. And this is 5/4-inch floppy disk, and this is the 5/4-inch floppy disk drive which is used to read and write the information on this floppy disk. And this is the 3.5-inch floppy disk, and this is the drive 3.5-inch floppy disk drive which is used to read write the information on this floppy disk. So CD, DVD, SATA, and IDE connectors. So in motherboards maximum we are getting SATA connectors, and of course 1 or 2 IDE connectors also. And IDE integrated drive electronics controllers can be used to connect hard disk drive and also CD or DVD drives. So now in the advanced one, we are getting for SATA connectors maximum 4 or more SATA connectors which are used for connecting hard disk drive, CD or DVD drives, and etc. So here we connect the SATA enabled devices to these connectors, and here we connect the IDE enabled devices to these connectors. So this is a CD or DVD ROM drive. There are different types of CDs and DVD ROM drives. So next components in the motherboard is RAM slots. So these are the RAM slots, and here we insert the SIMs or DIMMs based on the type of the slots available on the motherboard. Generally RAM is inserted into RAM slots available on the motherboard. In older motherboards there was no such type of facility. The RAM was fixed, and the RAM itself was mounted on the motherboard itself in the form of dual line package integrated circuits. So here now we are getting in the form of memory sticks. These are called memory sticks, and these can be inserted on these slots. These are called RAM slots, and in these RAM slots we can add RAM sticks in the form of SIM and DIMMs, and size can be increased or decreased depends upon the requirement. Here nothing but we can enhance the RAM capacity of the system automatically, by removing old one and a lesser capacity RAM slots, RAM sticks we can remove, and we can add higher capacity RAMs in these RAM slots. So next components we can identify in the motherboard. So first one, expansion slots. So these are all expansion slots. So these are called ISA, industry standard architecture slots on the motherboard. So these were almost old and obsolete, and these ISA slots were used to add-on cards, expansion cards, which were ISA based. And next advanced one is the PCI, peripheral component interconnect, PCI. These are PCI slots. These are also used to add expansion or add-on cards which are PCI based. And this one is called auxiliary graphics port, which is used for connecting the extra graphics port to the motherboard and nothing but to the computer. So these are called ESA. This up to this is ESA slot, and this entire one is called EISA, enhanced ESA. So by using these PCI or ESA slots, we can add peripheral components like with the help of add-on cards, we can add extra devices. So here also expansion cards we can see expand. These are white color PCI slots, and in this black color these are called ESA slots. And this is called expansion expansion card, which can be inserted on the PCI slots on ESA slots based on this card. So these are called back panel connectors on the motherboard. We can identify. So mouse and keyboard, mouse and keyboards connector, these two are, and this one is called serial port. Here we can see, and this one parallel port. This one is a 25 pin parallel port, and this one is a VGA port, 15 pin VGA port used to connect monitors. And here we have USB ports. Here also 4 USB ports are available, and this one is the network port. This is also called RJ45 port, and these are audio video connectors. These are entire things are called back panel connectors on the motherboard. Here also we can see back panel connectors ports, display ports. Here we can see serial port, VGA port, USB port, audio port, LAN port, and parallel port, mouse, PS2 mouse and PS2 keyboard. So here also we can see different types of back panel connectors on the motherboard. So various motherboard console, if we are able to find this back panel connector, the entire section. This is called AGP slot, and SATA buses. These are SATA buses, IDE or ATA connectors, and these are PCA slots, and memory slots. These are RAM slots, nothing but this is CPU socket, and floppy connector, and main power connector on the motherboard. There is a ATX power connector used to connect, used for supplying the power to motherboard. Now, this power supply is coming from the SMPS, and this is a connector which is used for power supply of motherboard. So north bridge and south bridge, there is a north bridge and south bridge which are used for communication purpose, and north bridge is used for memory bus, and south bridge is used for I/O controller bus. And these are called front panel connectors: power switch, reset switch, power LED, hard drive LED, and front audio ports. So these are called front panel connectors on the motherboard: hard disk drive LED, power LED, power switch, and here voltage reset switch. Here we can see power LED switches here on the motherboard. These are available on the motherboard. So front panel USB 2.0 and also 3.1 connectors, USB 1, 2 and 3, and these are used for connecting the extra USB enabled devices. Here we can see USB 3.1 and USB ports. And another component of the motherboard is CMOS battery. The complementary metal oxide semiconductor CMOS is a small battery on the system that powers the CMOS battery, CMOS memory. This is the CMOS battery on the motherboard. The CMOS important settings in the computer such as date, time, configuration, battery, etc. in such a way that when the computer is switched off, such settings are maintained with the help of this battery. ROM BIOS. So read-only memory basic input-output system. The BIOS chip contains the basic code needed to take the computer through the boot process up to the point where the operating system takes over. Since the BIOS code is stored on a memory chip that needs to constant power to function, this is the BIOS chip on the motherboard. So this is another picture showing the RAM BIOS on the motherboard. So IDE and IDE connector, CMOS battery, and here we have IDE connector and SATA connectors we have for connecting the hard disk drive, CD-ROM drive, and etc. The AGP slot, this one AGP slot. So different components on the motherboard. So far we have seen different components on the motherboard. We will also watch a video containing all these motherboard components. Thank you. Now we will see motherboard components, a video on motherboard components. So starting from this, so there are different motherboard components on the motherboard. So in this motherboard there are different components are available. So we will see what are these components. So first we will start from the back panel. So these are called PS2 mouse and PS2 keyboard connectors, and this one is parallel port connectors used for connecting the printer, and this one is used to connect the serial port connector. This one is used to connect VGA port used for connecting monitor, and these are USB ports used for connecting USB enabled devices. And this one is network port used to connect LAN connector. LAN cable can be inserted here, and these are the audio and video ports. So in this we insert the RJ45 jack for getting the LAN connectivity, and these are audio ports, audio and video ports available on the motherboard. And remaining parts on the motherboard, if we see, and these are the RAM slots. These are the RAM slots used for inserting the RAM or DIMMs and SIMs here in this area. And these are called IDE ports, IDE connectors used for connecting the hard disk drive, IDE enabled hard disk drives and floppy disk drives. So here we have two IDE connectors for connecting the hard disk. So ID means integrated drive electronics, ID 1 and 2, and this one is used for black color, is used to connect the floppy disk drive. And by using these two ID connectors we can have hard disk connectors. And here this is called CMOS battery, used to supply backup, used for backup for ROM BIOS. And next, this is called ROM BIOS chip, and these are called PCI expansion slots used for inserting add-on cards, PCI enabled add-on cards. In this there are three PCI slots here, and this is the AGP slot, auxiliary graphics port, used for adding extra add-on card for enhancing the graphics facility. This is called North Bridge, South Bridge chips. On this, above this is called East Sync. So North Bridge used for memory control hub, and South Bridge used for IO control hub. And if you see another devices on the motherboard, so here this is called CPU socket. This is CPU socket lever. By pulling this lever, we open the cover. Here we can insert the CPU, and we cover this, and then we close this by lever. And this is the power supply to the CPU coming from the SMPS main, and this is the main power supply used for motherboard coming from the SMPS. And this, if you see, these are called front panel connectors used for connecting the USB devices here, and in the here also on off devices, reset switch and power LED switch are available in the motherboard. So this is all about motherboard components. We will also another video on motherboard components. We will see what are the components available. So this is a typical one of the typical motherboard, where we can find out number of components available on the motherboard. So there are different types of components mounted on this motherboard. Here, if you see, this one is the power connector used for supplying the power to the motherboard coming from the SMPS. Here we have AGP slot, these are PCA slots, and some other components are available. This is the power connector used for CPU power. So separate power is given for CPU coming from SMPS. Here this is a connector. So here we have another connector. This is a connector used for supplying the power to the CPU fan, and another connector, power supply connector, used for connecting the system fan, and this is called CMOS battery used for supply of backup power to the CMOS RAM. As the CPU socket, here we can insert the CPU in this socket. With these levers we can pull, and we can open the cover, and also we can insert the CPU here. And this is called north bridge. This is also acts as memory controller hub. This is called south bridge. This acts as IO controller hub in this motherboard. The south bridge and north bridge and south bridge plays an important role on the motherboard. And this is called ROM BIOS chip on the motherboard. Read-only memory, basic input output system chip on the motherboard. And these are called RAM slots. 2 RAM slots available on this motherboard. We can insert RAM types. Here these are called IDE connectors. 2 IDE connectors are there, used to connect IDE based hard disk drive and CD-ROM drive here. And this is IDE connector used for connecting floppy disk drive. This is a 36-pin floppy disk drive connector. And these are SATA connectors used for connecting SATA enabled devices like hard disk drive, CD-ROM drive, and etc. And here we can connect IDE, and here we connect the SATA enabled devices. Here external USB ports can be connected here. USB headers, this is called USB headers. We can connect two USB ports externally, so by using cable here. And these are the front panel connectors. So these are the indicators, reset switch, power LED switch, and etc. These are available here. And so this is all about motherboard components, details about motherboard components on the motherboard. Thank you.